There's certain iconography and cultural trends we've all agreed are representative of the 1980s. It's not wrong to think that it was a decade consumed with materialism, bright colors, and the Cold War, and that the soundtrack of the time was heavy metal, new wave, and synthesizer-driven dance pop. But as the 80s move further and further away into history and the collective memory, many important and popular musical acts of the day have seen their stature fade away too. 10 years is a long time, and the 1980s were rich with musical talent. It wasn't all sad British guys with keyboards and party-hard Americans with guitars and flowing tresses. Musically, the 80s seems like several decades rolled into one, with established acts of yesteryear competing with newcomers for radio airplay, record store space, and attention on that newfangled music machine called MTV. Some of those new acts were bound to be forgotten when the artists stopped making music, or failed to evolve, or fans simply moved on. Here are some quintessentially 1980s musicians who have largely been lost to time. Tears for Fears. If one instrument defined the sound of the 1980s, it was the synthesizer, and Tears for Fears made it their playground. With a sound that could be ominous, sweeping, or downright overwhelming, their lush sonic landscapes added depth to lyrics that were often dark, emotional, and deeply introspective. The duo, Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith, crafted a style that sat perfectly between new wave shimmer and gothic edge. Tracks like Everybody Wants to Rule the World tackled Cold War paranoia and the lust for control, while Shout delivered a raw, emotional protest wrapped in themes of mental health and release. Surprisingly, the bright, flashy 80s were a perfect backdrop for their serious tone. Both songs hit #1 in the US. Meanwhile, Head Over Heels, a hauntingly bittersweet love song in a subtly off-kilter key, climbed to #3 after taking years to craft their next chapter. The band re-emerged at the end of the decade with a sound that was fresh yet nostalgic. Sowing the Seeds of Love paid open tribute to the Beatles' psychedelic era, peaking at #2 on the US pop charts and topping the newly minted alternative rock chart. Shortly after, Smith departed, leaving Orzabal to carry the name solo. But they weren't done just yet. In 1993, Break It Down Again gave Tears for Fears one last major hit, a fitting end note for a band deeply entwined with the social and political pulse of the 80s. Scorpions, just like the British invasion rocked the 60s, the 80s brought a German invasion to American airwaves. Artists from West Germany, or those singing in German, suddenly found themselves on the charts. Think Nena, Trio, Alphaville, and Falco. But only one band managed to stick the landing. Scorpions, their secret? They didn't just sing in English, they spoke the universal language of 80s hard rock. This was the era of big riffs, blazing guitar solos, and crowd-ready anthems. Formed all the way back in 1965, Scorpions knew how to evolve. While other acts faded after a hit or two, they delivered monster tracks like No One Like You, Big City Nights, and of course the iconic Rock You Like a Hurricane. Metalheads couldn't get enough of their dark, melodic, and razor-sharp sound. Ironically, the band's biggest hit came at the end of their peak, and it wasn't a shred fest. Wind of Change was a heartfelt ballad written to mark the fall of the Berlin Wall. It hit #4 in 1990 and became an unofficial anthem for the end of European communism, capturing a moment of hope, unity, and transformation. Today, Scorpions are still going, but only Rudolf Schenker, the band's founder, remains from the original lineup. Yet their legacy, unshakable. Men at Work. In the 1980s, American pop culture was inundated with content from Australia. Outback Steakhouse, TV Battery at Pitchman Jacko, and the films Crocodile Dundee and Young Einstein all came after Men at Work scaled the charts. The combo of the alternately exasperated and wailing vocals of frontman Colin Hay and the flute and saxophone work of Greg Ham made for some sensational and novel pop rock, including the back-to-back #1 hits Who Can It Be Now and Down Under, the latter a celebration of Australianism. Men at Work's debut album, Business as Usual, was among the first beneficiaries of MTV. The network didn't have much of a video library in 1982, but it did have some Men at Work clips, and sales of the band's music skyrocketed in cities whose cable networks carried the new channel. Men at Work got another album out quickly in 1983, Cargo, which produced the more melancholy singles Overkill and It's a Mistake. These would be the band's final hits. Internal tension that sprouted during Men at Work's period of global success led to a breakup in 1986. Asia. A very 1980s-sounding arena rock band, Asia was a supergroup formed by members of several prominent progressive rock bands of the 1970s. Carl Palmer, of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, teamed up with Steve Howe of Yes, John Wetton of King Crimson, and Jeffrey Downs of the Buggles, responsible for the first video ever played on MTV, to make a self-titled album in 1982. Fueled by the hits Soul Survivor, Only Time Will Tell, and Heat of the Moment. It became one of the best-selling albums on Earth that year. Asia hurried to record and release its next album, Alpha, to meet demand. But it still sold more than 1 million copies and spawned the hits The Heat Goes On and Don't Cry. Victimized by diminishing returns, Asia couldn't garner much interest in its third album, Astra, nor its minor hit singles Go and Too Late. Even the best supergroups in history have a relatively short shelf life owing to ego, creative clashes, and the musicians' desire to return to their regular gigs. Asia broke up in 1985 and reunited for tours in the 1990s and beyond, but often without at least one of its original members, Pet Shop Boys. There were a lot of duos coming out of the UK club world making explosive and dramatic dance pop with an arsenal of synthesizers, and the Pet Shop Boys were probably the act most associated with all that. From 1984 to 1988, Neil, Tennant and Chris Lowe dominated dark, brooding dance music with lyrically detached, irony-drenched songs like Opportunities, It's a Sin, and Always on My Mind, while West End Girls went to #1 in both the US and the UK post-disco dance music is so deeply associated with the 1980s that the Pet Shop Boys' presence and impact became less pronounced over the years. A would-be comeback album, Very, packaged in an eye-catching orange plastic Lego-like cover, included songs like I Wouldn't Normally Do This Kind of Thing, and a cover of the Village People's Go West that were well-received in dance clubs but ignored by radio and record buyers. Toto. Because the members of Toto were all extremely polished studio musicians before, during, and after their time in the band, they played on a combined total of more than 5,000 albums. So even if it wasn't specifically Toto on the radio or record player in the early to mid-1980s, the record likely included the work of one of its constituent members. The backing band for many songs on Michael Jackson's 1982 juggernaut Thriller included members of Toto, which, around the very same time, released its fourth studio album, IV. That LP set the standard for smooth, precise, laid-back 80s rock, and it won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. IV contained Toto's two best-known songs, the propulsive and jazzy #2 hit Rosanna and the wistful epic Africa, a #1 smash. Toto's story was a tragic one. The commercial peaks in the IV era earned the band nothing but jeers from critics, and Toto couldn't manage even a minor hit after 1988. While Toto has continued on in various capacities, even weathering the death of drummer and bandleader Jeff Porcaro in 1992, the group officially split up for the first time in 2008. Culture Club. Boy George wasn't just a pop star, he was a symbol of the 1980s, a totem of style, controversy, and unforgettable charisma. Yet while his image never faded, Culture Club's musical impact often gets overshadowed by his celebrity. As much a fashion icon as a frontman, Boy George turned heads with his bold, androgynous looks and skillfully sidestepped the era's relentless questions about his identity. But it wasn't just about the visuals. Culture Club blended infectious pop hooks with new wave edge, producing emotionally charged hits like Karma Chameleon, Church of the Poison Mind, Miss Me Blind, It's a Miracle, and The War Song. Their rise was fast, and so was their fall. Within just 3 years, internal tensions boiled over, and in 1986, the group disbanded, worn out by the very chemistry that had made them so magnetic. Even after Culture Club's breakup, Boy George stayed in the spotlight. He found solo success with the haunting theme for The Crying Game in 1992, dabbled in Broadway with his ill-fated musical Taboo in 2003, and faced his share of public scandals, including a 2009 prison sentence tied to a high-profile legal case. Through it all, Boy George remained a cultural force, proof that some stars burn too brightly to ever truly fade. Please comment below if you want the part 2 of this video. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.